Good morning students, I am Shomujit. Today I am here to deliver my lecture on topic test cross and back cross. So in the last class I have already discussed about monohybrid cross. Now I will discuss about the test cross and back cross. Watch the entire lecture as I always say to clear your basics. If you have not seen the earlier videos, go to the video section and please say it. So this is a very interesting topic of back cross and test cross. You should watch the entire lecture to grasp the basic out of it. So without any delay, let's start. So in the topic of test cross and back cross, you can see the two diagrams I have given. I have labeled two different diagrams. One is back cross, another is test cross. First I'll explain what is a back cross, what is a test cross. Clear? So let's proceed. Now see, what is a back cross? Clear? Now see, from the monohybrid cross, while you are doing the monohybrid cross, you have found an F1 hybrid, isn't it? So F1 hybrid was tall in a monohybrid case when you consider tall and dwarf plant. So whenever that F1 hybrid is crossed with either male or female, that means either dominant or recessive of the previous generation, then it is called a back cross. But when the F1 hybrid, that is capital T small t, phenotype of tall, when crossed with only the recessive of previous generation, previous parental generation, that is a test cross. So you can see the definition for a back cross. See, it is a genetic cross between heterozygote, that means capital T small t, that was a phenotype tall, isn't it? But genotype is heterozygote, clear? With a homozygous recessive small t dwarf, clear? Or one more cross is there, a cross between heterozygote, that means F1 hybrid, with the homozygous dominant is called a back cross. So first definition example is capital T small t, that is F1 hybrid, into small t, the recessive of the previous generation. Or another, it will be F1 hybrid with the dominant one. So basically what is a back cross? When F1 hybrid is crossed with either male or female of the previous generation, clear? So that is a back cross. And if the F1 hybrid is crossed with only recessive one, so then that will be a test cross. So therefore all test crosses are back crosses, whereas all back crosses are not test crosses. I repeat, this is a very important line. All test crosses are back crosses, whereas all back crosses are not test cross. So for test cross, you can see a genetic cross between homozygous recessive individual and a heterozygous to determine the genotype of the next generation. So capital T small t crosses with small t. Now difference between heterozygous and homozygous. Homozygous and heterozygous. Homo means same, isn't it? Similar alleles, and hetero means different allele. As well as it in homozygous it produces one type of gamete, whereas in heterozygous it produces two different kinds of gamete, isn't it? Like for homozygous, the genotype for homozygous possesses either dominant or recessive, but never both the allele, isn't it? Either it will be dominant, either recessive. So it can be, one example is given, capital R, capital R, or smaller, or we can consider capital T or small t. But in heterozygote, the genotype of heterozygote possesses both dominant and recessive allele. For example, capital R, smaller, or we can consider that F1 hybrid of monohybrid, that is capital T small t, the hybrid one, isn't it? Next, moving to a back cross. So I have said that in a back cross, two different cases can be found. One, F1 hybrid crosses with dominant, or F1 hybrid crosses with recessive, isn't it? So the left hand side you can see F1 hybrid crosses with dominant, and right hand side you can see F1 hybrid crosses with recessive. These all are the recessive and dominant of the previous generation, parental generation, clear? So you can see the left hand side crossing, capital T small t produces two gametes, one is capital T and another small t, as well as capital T can be of can produce capital T, one capital T, or clear. So you do the crossing, you find this in the right hand side, you can see same way gametes will take out and do. These all are done in the monohybrid cross, so but the difference is that when F1 hybrid crosses with the dominant, all are tall, that means 100% tall plants were produced, whereas whenever the F1 hybrid is crossed with parental recessive generation, then 50% tall and 50% dwarf variety were produced. 50%, clear? So it's not 50%. Like if there are 4 individual, chances will be 2 will be tall and 2 will be dwarf. Whereas in left side, like when F1 hybrid crosses with dominant one, the chances that all 100% of the plant will be tall only. Now moving to test cross. What is test cross? You see, when F1 hybrid is crosses with recessive one, clear? So when F1 hybrid is crossing with the recessive of the previous parental generation, so you can find the gametes and the crossing by Punn's checkerboard. We can find, you can see here 50% tall and 50% dwarf is being produced, clear? So once more I repeat, all test crosses are back crosses, whereas all back crosses are not test crosses, right? Understood? This is an important line. All test crosses are back crosses, whereas all back crosses are not test cross. Now you can see the differences between a test cross and a back cross. See, what is a test cross? The test cross is the breeding of dominant phenotype with its recessive phenotype, clear? And a back cross is the breeding of F1 hybrid with one of its parent. So one more difference, all the test crosses are back crosses, as I have said earlier. And for back crosses, you can see back crosses of F1 hybrid with the recessive phenotype can be considered as a test cross. Alright, next point, the F1 hybrid is crossed with recessive genotype in the test cross, whereas in back cross, the F1 hybrid is crossed with either homozygous dominant or heterozygous genotype in the back cross, clear? One more for test cross is, test cross identifies the zygosity of its dominant phenotype, whereas the back crosses recover the elite genotype, clear? So one more differences I have given, the differences between reciprocal cross and the test cross, isn't it? So you can see the differences. See, definition of reciprocal cross. Reciprocal cross is a type of genetic cross that determines whether the trait is sex-linked or autosomal, clear? Whereas the test cross, just now I have discussed, it is a type of cross that determines the zygosity of the parents of a trait. Then the next point, next differences between reciprocal cross and a test cross. In reciprocal cross, a male and female each homozygous for the trait and cross with each other, with each individual who does not have the trait. Whereas in test cross, the unknown dominant phenotype is crossed with an individual parent homozygous recessive for that trait, clear? One more is the for reciprocal cross must be true breeding, clear? That means homozygous for the trait, and this side for unknown dominant phenotype. And what will be the outcome of reciprocal cross? It determines the role of the parental sex in the inheritance of a trait and reveals whether the trait is sex-linked or autosomal, whereas in test cross, it determines the heterozygosity of the trait. So these are the following differences between reciprocal cross and a test cross. So student, these are the homework questions. First question, show the crossing of test cross with example. Define test cross and back cross. Show the crossing of back cross with example. So thank you student, this was all about today's lecture of test cross and back cross. Here I have taught you, given you the definition of test cross, back crosses, the crossing of test cross, crossing of back cross, and the differences between reciprocal cross and a test cross. So certain homework questions are there. So watch the entire lecture to gain the basic concept out of it. So thank you class, again we'll meet in the next class. Thank you students, and stay at home and stay safe. And one line you should remember from this video lecture from the basics of test cross and back cross is that all test crosses are back crosses, whereas all back crosses are never test cross. Clear? Understood?